I never thought I'd be the woman checking her bank account in a grocery store parking lot, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. But there I was, staring at a screen that showed our joint checking account had exactly $47 left. $47. We'd started the month with over $8,000. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Natalie Chen, and I've been married to Marcus for 6 years. 6 years of building a life together, of combining our finances like responsible adults, of trusting each other with passwords and PIN numbers and every cent we earned. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized tech company in Portland, and Marcus was a sales manager for an automotive parts distributor. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or at least I thought we were. The discovery happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I'd gone to pay for groceries, just the usual stuff, nothing extravagant. Milk, eggs, some chicken breasts, vegetables, the kind of cart that maybe totals $80. When my card declined, I felt that hot flush of embarrassment that comes when everyone in line behind you sighs with impatience. The cashier, a tired-looking woman with purple streaks in her hair, gave me a sympathetic smile. "Want to try another card, honey?" I fumbled for our secondary card, the one we kept for emergencies. Declined. My stomach dropped. I mumbled an apology, abandoned my cart, and practically ran to my car. That's when I opened the banking app and saw the damage. The transaction history read like a novel I never wanted to read. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel bookings in Seattle, a city Marcus had supposedly visited twice in the past month for work conferences. Purchases at jewelry stores, high-end boutiques, a spa in the Pearl District. Hundreds of dollars at a wine bar called Amelie's that I'd never even heard of. The charges went back almost 3 months, gradually increasing in frequency and amount. It was methodical, like watching someone slowly drain the life from something precious. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour, scrolling through everything. My hands stopped shaking and went numb instead. That's worse somehow, the numbness. It means your brain is protecting you from the full weight of what you're seeing, because if you felt it all at once, you might shatter. Marcus was supposed to be at work. I called him anyway. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. His voice, so familiar it hurt, told me to leave a message. I didn't. Instead, I drove home to our small craftsman house in the Selwood neighborhood, the one we'd saved for 3 years to afford the down payment on. The one where we'd painted the bedroom pale blue together, where we'd adopted our cat Miso from the shelter, where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinner for both our families just last year. The house was empty. Miso greeted me at the door with her usual demanding meow, completely unaware that her world was about to change. I fed her, then sat at our kitchen table with my laptop and started digging deeper. If you've never had to become a detective in your own marriage, let me tell you, it's exhausting. Every click feels like a betrayal, but also like a necessity. You need to know. You need to understand the shape of the lie you've been living inside. I logged into our credit card accounts. We had 3 cards, all joint. The first card, the one we used for regular expenses, was maxed out. $15,000 limit, and every single dollar was gone. The charges were similar to what I'd seen in the checking account. Dinners, hotels, shopping sprees. The second card was nearly maxed too, sitting at $13,000 out of a $15,000 limit. The third card, the one we'd opened just for travel and barely used, had $6,000 charged to it. $34,000. In 3 months. On top of draining our checking account. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. That's the thing about shock. It creates this weird distance between you and reality. I could see the numbers. I could understand what they meant. But I couldn't quite connect them to my life, to my marriage, to the man who'd kissed me goodbye that morning and told me he'd pick up Thai food on his way home. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Running late, might not make it home for dinner. Don't wait up." I stared at those words for a long time. How many times had I received a message just like that over the past few months? How many late nights and weekend work trips had I accepted without question because I trusted him? Because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them. I texted back. "No problem. See you when you get home." Then I started taking screenshots. Every transaction, every charge, every piece of evidence. I saved them to a cloud folder Marcus didn't have access to. My hands were steady now. The numbness had transformed into something else, something colder and more focused. Around 8 that evening, I called my best friend, Simone. We'd known each other since college, where we'd bonded over terrible dorm food and even worse dating choices. She'd been my maid of honor. She'd been the one who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress. If anyone would know what to do, it would be her. Nat? What's wrong? She picked up on the first ring, her voice immediately concerned. I think Marcus is having an affair. Silence. Then, I'm coming over. 20 minutes. Simone showed up in 15, carrying a bottle of wine and a box of tissues. She sat next to me at the kitchen table while I walked her through everything I'd found. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes, just listened. When I finished, she poured us both a very full glass of wine. You need a lawyer, she said. Like yesterday. I need to talk to him first. I need to hear him say it. Nat, he spent $34,000 on someone else. There's nothing he can say that's going to make this okay. She was right, but I still needed to hear it. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe I was still holding on to some tiny thread of hope that there was an explanation, some impossible scenario where all of this made sense and my marriage wasn't actually over. Marcus came home around 11. I'd sent Simone away an hour earlier, promising to call her if things got bad. He walked in looking tired, his tie loosened, carrying a plastic bag from a Thai restaurant. The normalcy of it was almost funny. Hey babe, sorry I'm so late. Brought you pad see ew. He kissed my forehead, completely casual, like this was any other Tuesday night. I didn't move from the couch. We need to talk. Something in my voice must have tipped him off because his expression changed. The easy smile disappeared. What's going on? I tried to buy groceries today. My card was declined. I watched his face carefully, saw the moment panic flickered across it before he controlled it. Oh, that's weird. Must be a fraud alert or something. I'll call the bank tomorrow. I already checked the account, Marcus. I checked all of them. The plastic bag slipped from his hand. Thai food containers tumbled onto the floor, noodles spilling across our hardwood. Neither of us moved to clean it up. Who is she? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nat, I can explain. Who is she? Her name is Vanessa. We met at a work conference in June. It just happened, I didn't plan it. I never meant for any of this to. You spent $34,000 on her. In 3 months. His face went pale. You checked the credit cards? You maxed them out. All of them. Marcus, we had savings. We had plans. We were going to finally take that trip to Japan next year, remember? We were saving for that. And you spent it all on someone you've known for 3 months. I was going to pay it back. I just got a bonus coming, and I thought I could fix it before you noticed. That might have been the part that hurt the most. Not that he'd cheated. Not even that he'd stolen from our joint accounts. But that he'd thought he could fix it, could hide it, could make it disappear like it never happened. Like I was someone who could be managed, deceived, kept in the dark for my own good. Where is she? Where does she live? That doesn't matter. Tell me. She has an apartment in the Pearl District. I've been helping her with rent. Of course he had. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Let me guess. She's younger than me. He had the decency to look ashamed. She's 26. I was 33. Marcus was 35. Vanessa was 26 and living in a nice apartment in one of Portland's trendiest neighborhoods, wearing jewelry my husband bought her, eating at restaurants I couldn't afford, all while I was clipping coupons and meal planning to try to stick to our budget. Get out. Nat, please, we can work through this. Get out of my house. It's our house. Then I'll leave. Either way, I don't want to see you right now. He stood there for a long moment, and I could see him trying to figure out what to say, what magic words might somehow fix this. But there weren't any. Some things once broken stay broken. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door. I'll stay at a hotel tonight. We'll talk tomorrow when you've calmed down. When I've calmed down. Like I was being hysterical. Like my reaction to discovering my husband had been living a double life was somehow unreasonable. The door closed behind him. I sat on the couch surrounded by spilled Thai food and the wreckage of my marriage, and I didn't cry. I was still too numb for tears. Instead, I picked up my phone and started making a list of everything I needed to do. Cancel the credit cards. Open new accounts in just my name. Call a lawyer. Figure out how to untangle 6 years of shared finances. The practical stuff, the stuff I could control. Miso jumped up next to me and started purring, kneading her paws against my leg. At least someone in this house still loved me unconditionally. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through our entire financial history, building a timeline of the affair through credit card statements and bank records. The first charge had been in mid-June, just a few days after Marcus came back from that conference in Seattle. Dinner at a fancy steakhouse. $247. It had seemed reasonable at the time. A celebration dinner for landing a big client, he'd said. After that, the charges became more frequent. Coffee shops, always the same one in the Pearl District.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Lunch dates at trendy restaurants. Then the bigger stuff started. A necklace from a boutique jeweler, $800. A weekend at a resort on the coast, $1,200. Lingerie from an expensive shop downtown, $300. I knew that lingerie wasn't for me because I'd never seen it. By the time the sun came up Wednesday morning, I had everything documented, organized, and saved in multiple places. I'd also drafted an email to a divorce attorney Simone had recommended, laying out the basics of my situation. I sent it at 7 a.m., then called in sick to work. There was no way I could sit in meetings and pretend everything was fine. Marcus tried calling around 9. I didn't answer. He texted, "Can we please talk? I made a terrible mistake. I love you." I turned my phone to silent and drove to the bank. The branch manager, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, listened to my situation with increasing concern. She helped me remove Marcus's name from our joint checking account and transfer my half of the remaining $47 to a new account in just my name. She explained that the credit card debt was unfortunately something we were both liable for since they were joint accounts, but that a divorce attorney could help me figure out how to handle that. "I see this more often than you'd think," Patricia said gently as she handed me paperwork to sign. "I'm sorry you're going through this." Her sympathy almost broke through the numbness. Almost. But I held it together, signed everything, and left with new debit cards and a fresh start, financially speaking at least. The attorney Rebecca Walsh called me that afternoon. Her voice was professional but warm. "I read your email. I'm so sorry. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I had a cancellation at 10. I took the appointment." That night, Marcus came home while I was packing some of his things. He stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching me fold his shirts and place them in a suitcase. "What are you doing? Making it easier for you to stay somewhere else. Nat, please. Can we just talk about this?" I kept folding. "What's there to talk about? You had an affair. You spent our money. You lied to me for months. Those are facts. But I ended it. Yesterday, after I left here, I went to Vanessa's place and I ended it. I told her I was staying with my wife. That made me look up." "You ended it?" "Yes. I realized what I was throwing away. I realized that what we have is worth more than some stupid fling. A stupid fling. $34,000 worth of stupid fling." "What did she say when you ended it?" He looked uncomfortable. "She was upset. But she understood." "Did you tell her you'd spent all our money on her?" "I told her I couldn't see her anymore." I zipped the suitcase closed and set it by the door. "You need to leave, Marcus. I have a lawyer's appointment tomorrow. I'm filing for divorce." His face crumpled. "You can't mean that." "I absolutely mean that. But we can fix this. Couples get through affairs all the time. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. You maxed out our credit cards, Marcus. You drained our savings. Even if I could somehow forgive the cheating, how am I supposed to forgive that? How am I supposed to trust you with money ever again? With anything?" He didn't have an answer for that. He picked up the suitcase and left. The meeting with Rebecca went exactly as I expected. She explained Oregon's divorce laws, what I could expect in terms of asset division, how to handle the debt. The credit card companies could come after either or both of us for the money. In a divorce, the judge would likely split the debt. But given that Marcus had incurred it all without my knowledge for an extramarital affair, There was a good chance I could get a favorable ruling. The key thing is documentation, Rebecca said. Which it sounds like you already have. Every transaction, every lie, every hotel stay. It all builds the case. I hired her on the spot. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved through life on autopilot. Work, home, sleep, repeat. Marcus stayed at a hotel at first, then moved in with a friend from work. He kept trying to reach out, kept insisting we could fix things. I stopped responding. Simone checked on me daily. My parents, who I'd finally told, drove up from Eugene and took me out for a sad dinner where my mother cried more than I did. My dad just looked angry, his jaw tight, saying things like, I never trusted that boy, even though he'd walked me down the aisle with tears of joy in his eyes. Then, 3 weeks after I'd discovered everything, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Natalie Chen? A woman's voice, young and uncertain. Yes. Who's this? My name is Vanessa. I think we need to talk. My blood went cold. I have nothing to say to you. Please just listen. I didn't know he was married. Not at first. He told me he was divorced. He showed me pictures of a house and said it was his, that he lived alone. I believed him. I sat down heavily on my couch. When did you find out? About a week ago. I saw his Facebook profile. He never mentioned having a wife, and I didn't know his last name until recently. When I searched for him, I saw all your photos together. Pictures from your wedding. Recent pictures from this year. I confronted him. What did he say? He admitted it. Said you two were having problems, that you were basically roommates, all the usual stuff. But I could tell he was lying. So I ended it. I barked out a laugh. He told me he ended it. Of course he did. She paused. Look, I know I'm not innocent in this. I should have asked more questions. But I genuinely thought he was single. And when I found out the truth, I felt sick. Why are you calling me? Because I wanted you to know that I didn't set out to be the other woman. And because I think you should know something else. My stomach tightened. What? Those credit cards? The ones he was using? They started declining about a week ago. He took me to dinner at this nice restaurant in the Pearl, and when the bill came, his card got declined. He tried 2 more. Both declined. He ended up having to call someone to transfer money, just so we could pay and leave. So that was what finally made her suspicious enough to look him up. Not a moral awakening. Not a guilty conscience. His credit cards getting declined. He told me he was having cash flow issues, Vanessa continued. That a big commission check was delayed. But then when I found out about you, I realized what probably happened. I canceled the cards, I said flatly. After I found out about you. Good. You should know something else too. The reason I'm really calling. Marcus kept promising me things. He said he was going to help me start a business. He said he was going to take me to Hawaii. He had all these plans. But the minute those cards stopped working, he changed. Got mean actually. Started saying I was too expensive, that I wanted too much. Like I was some kind of gold digger. Were you? She was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Maybe. He offered me everything. He wanted to take care of me. I never asked for the jewelry or the fancy dinners, but he insisted. And yeah, I liked it. I liked feeling special. But when the money stopped, I didn't stick around for him. I stuck around to figure out what was true and what was a lie. And now you know. Now I know. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. For whatever that's worth. You didn't deserve this. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, trying to process the conversation. Vanessa hadn't known, at least not at first. And when she found out, when the fantasy of the generous divorced man fell apart, she left. She'd left him the moment his credit card stopped working. There was something darkly satisfying about that. I called Simone and told her about the conversation. She let out a low whistle. So the affair partner bailed when the money dried up. That's some poetic justice right there. She said he got mean when the cards declined. Of course he did. His ego couldn't handle it. He probably thought he could charm his way through anything by his way through anything. And when he couldn't, his true colors showed. The next day, Marcus called me from yet another new number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? Nat, I need your help. His voice sounded strained, desperate even. No. Please just listen. The credit card companies are calling me. They want payment. I don't have it. I need more time. I need you to call them and explain. Explain what? That you committed fraud? That you spent thousands of dollars on an affair? It wasn't fraud. They were joint cards. I had every right to use them. Legally, maybe. Morally. You stole from us, Marcus. From our future. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I need help. I can't pay all of this back right now. If you could just talk to them, maybe work out a payment plan. That's your problem. Not mine. We're still married. That debt is yours too. Not for long. My lawyer will make sure the judge knows exactly who's responsible for that debt. This is revenge. You're punishing me. No, Marcus. This is consequences. There's a difference. I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then I called Rebecca and told her about the conversation. She made notes and assured me it would all be part of the case. The divorce moved forward. Marcus contested everything at first, tried to argue for a 50-50 split of assets and debts. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every receipt, every charge, every text message I'd managed to recover from our phone bill showing his constant communication with Vanessa throughout the summer. It painted a clear picture. In the end, Marcus was left with the bulk of the debt and I got to keep the house. The judge wasn't sympathetic to his arguments about how he'd made a mistake and deserved another chance. The law was the law and the facts were the facts. Through the grapevine, Simone had a friend who knew someone who knew someone. I heard that Vanessa had moved on pretty quickly after everything fell apart. She was dating some startup founder now, someone with actual money. Marcus had tried to contact her a few times apparently, but she'd blocked him. He'd lost everything. His marriage, his money, his affair partner, and a good chunk of his dignity. All because he couldn't keep it in his pants and thought he could fund a double life indefinitely. As for me, I'm still in the house. Still have miso. I paid off my half of the original debt from the checking account using some money my parents loaned me, and I'm slowly rebuilding my savings. The credit cards are closed, the accounts are separate, and I'm starting to feel like myself again. Some days are harder than others. I still find his things sometimes, tucked away in drawers or forgotten in the back of the closet. Each discovery is a small wound that has to heal. But I'm getting there. Simone came over last weekend and we painted the bedroom. Not pale blue anymore, but a warm golden yellow that makes the morning light feel like hope. We hung new curtains, rearranged the furniture, and made the space mine instead of ours. You know what the best part of this is? Simone said as we stood back to admire our work. What? He thought he could have it all. The stable wife at home, the exciting girlfriend in the city, the lifestyle he couldn't actually afford. And in the end he lost everything while you're here, in your house with your cat, building a life that's actually real. She was right. The poetic justice of it all wasn't lost on me. Vanessa dumped him the minute his cards declined, the minute the fantasy he'd built couldn't be sustained anymore. She saw him for what he really was. A liar with maxed out credit cards and no real substance beneath the expensive dinners and borrowed charm. And Marcus? Last I heard he was living in a studio apartment in Beaverton, working extra hours to try to pay down the debt, still trying to figure out how everything went so wrong so fast. I could almost feel sorry for him. Almost. But mostly I just feel grateful. Grateful that I found out when I did. Grateful for friends like Simone who showed up without question. Grateful for parents who drove up and helped me through the worst of it. Grateful that I'm young enough to start over, smart enough to know my worth, and strong enough to walk away from someone who didn't value what we had. The grocery store where my card first declined? I go there every week now. Same cashier with the purple streaks sometimes. She recognized me last month and smiled. Things get sorted out? She asked kindly. Yeah, I told her. They really did. And I meant it. Because sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the thing that saves you. Sometimes your card getting declined in a grocery store parking lot is the beginning of your real life. The one where you're not financing someone else's fantasy, but building your own reality instead. I'm not the same Natalie who trusted blindly, who never checked accounts because she believed in partnership and honesty. I'm wiser now, maybe a little harder around the edges, but also more myself than I've been in years. And every time I swipe my card now, my card in my name only connected to my account that I control, and it goes through with that satisfying beep. I feel a little surge of victory. Marcus thought he could build a castle on credit cards and lies. Instead, all he built was a house of cards that collapsed the moment I pulled out the foundation. And me? I'm still standing. Still here. Still building. Just not with him. The divorce was finalized on a gray morning in late November. I sat in the courtroom wearing a navy dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, something that felt armor-like and professional. Marcus sat on the opposite side with his attorney, a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit who seemed to know his client didn't have much of a case. The proceedings took less than an hour. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewed all the documentation Rebecca had submitted and barely looked at Marcus when she spoke. The ruling was exactly what Rebecca had predicted. I kept the house. Marcus took 70% of the credit card debt. We split the remaining assets down the middle, which didn't amount to much after everything he'd spent. The judge made a pointed comment about fiscal responsibility and marital trust that made Marcus's ears turn red. When the gavel came down, it felt both anticlimactic and monumental at the same time. 6 years of marriage, dissolved in 45 minutes of legal procedure. Marcus tried to approach me as we left the courtroom. Nat, can we just? No. I didn't even slow down. Rebecca's hand was firm on my elbow, guiding me past him and out into the hallway where the fluorescent lights hummed overhead and other people's lives were being legally untangled all around us. In the parking garage, Rebecca gave me a brief hug. Go home. Open a bottle of wine. Call your friends. You did it. I did exactly that. Simone came over with not one but 2 bottles of wine and a pizza from our favorite place on Hawthorne. We sat on my living room floor, which now had a new rug I'd picked out myself, and we toasted to new beginnings. Miso settled into Simone's lap and purred, and for the first time in months, I felt something that resembled peace. So what now? Simone asked, already halfway through her first glass. What does the newly single Natalie Chen do with her freedom? I have absolutely no idea. And I didn't. The past few months had been so focused on getting through the divorce, on handling the legal proceedings and the financial cleanup, that I hadn't thought much about what came after. Maybe I'll take up a hobby. Learn pottery. Join a book club. Pottery. Simone snorted. You're 33, not 73. What's wrong with pottery? Nothing. If you're also planning to wear elastic waist pants and complain about your hip replacement. She grinned at me. I'm thinking you need something more exciting. Travel. Adventure. A torrid affair with a man who actually has money in his bank account. I threw a pillow at her. Too soon. It's never too soon to start thinking about what you want next. You've spent half a year dealing with what Marcus did to you. Now it's time to figure out what you're going to do for you. She had a point. I'd been so caught up in the wreckage of my marriage that I'd forgotten to think about building something new. That night after Simone left, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and tried to make a list of things I wanted to do. The page stayed blank for a long time. Finally, I wrote, figure out who I am without him. Seemed like a good place to start. Work became my refuge over the next few weeks. I'd been promoted to senior marketing coordinator in October, right in the middle of the divorce chaos, and the new responsibilities gave me something concrete to focus on. My boss, a sharp woman named Linda who'd been through her own divorce years ago, seemed to understand that I needed to stay busy. She gave me projects that stretched me, challenged me, kept my brain occupied with strategy meetings and campaign rollouts instead of replaying the past. The holidays were hard. Thanksgiving was the first major milestone, and I spent it with my parents in Eugene rather than hosting like Marcus and I used to do. My mom made all my favorite dishes and didn't mention Marcus's name once, which I appreciated even though his absence was loud in all the spaces he used to occupy. My dad took me for a walk after dinner, just the two of us crunching through fallen leaves in their neighborhood. You doing okay, sweetheart? He asked it casually, but I could hear the weight behind the question. Some days are better than others. That's normal. Your mother went through something similar before we met. Guy she was engaged to turned out to be a liar. Took her a couple years to really trust again. I didn't know that. Mom was engaged before? Long time ago. Before you were born. She doesn't talk about it much, but I know it shaped her. Made her more careful, but also more sure of what she wanted. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Point is, this doesn't define you. What Marcus did, that's on him. How you come back from it, that's on you. What if I can't come back from it? You will. I know you will. You're stronger than you think. I wanted to believe him. Some days I did. Other days I felt like I was made of paper. Like one strong wind would scatter me into pieces. December brought the kind of cold rain that Portland is famous for. The type that seeps into your bones and makes you want to hibernate until spring. I threw myself into holiday shopping, into decorating the house with lights and a small tree that Miso immediately tried to climb. I went to the company holiday party and smiled through conversations with coworkers who asked about Marcus, giving them the condensed version. We're divorced now. It's for the best. They nodded sympathetically and changed the subject, and I was grateful for it. On Christmas Eve, I was wrapping presents in my living room when my phone rang. Unknown number. I'd gotten better about not answering those, but something made me pick up. Hello. Natalie? It's Vanessa. I almost hung up. Almost. But curiosity won out. What do you want? I know this is weird. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I felt like I needed to call. She sounded different than the last time we talked. Less uncertain, more resigned. Why? Because Marcus has been trying to contact me. A lot. And I thought you should know what he's saying. I set down the roll of wrapping paper. I'm listening. He's been messaging me on every platform I haven't blocked him on. Instagram, LinkedIn, even a fake Facebook account. He keeps saying he made a mistake choosing you over me. That he should have left you when he had the chance. That we could still be together if I just gave him another opportunity. My stomach turned. When did this start? Right after your divorce was finalized. I saw the announcement on his Facebook page. He posted some vague thing about new chapters and fresh starts. Then the messages started. What did you say? Nothing. I ignored all of it. But then tonight he showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up to ask if I wanted to see him, and I said absolutely not. He apparently waited outside for an hour before giving up. That's stalking. I know. That's why I'm calling. I wanted you to know in case he tries something with you. He seems unstable. Desperate. Did you call the police? I filed a report. They said they'd document it, but there wasn't much they could do unless he tries to contact me again or shows up again. I wanted to warn you because if he's this obsessed with me after a 3-month relationship, I can't imagine what he might be feeling about you after 6 years. She was right, and the realization sent a chill through me. Thank you for telling me. I also wanted to say something else. I've thought a lot about everything that happened, about my part in it. And I know I said this before, but I really am sorry. I should have walked away the minute I had doubts. I should have asked more questions. I let myself get swept up in the fantasy of it all, and that was selfish. Why are you really calling, Vanessa? She was quiet for a moment. Because I'm 26 and I almost destroyed a marriage and I have to live with that. Because my therapist says I need to take accountability. And because I guess I wanted you to know that not everything he told you about me was true. He painted me as this gold digger, right? This woman who was just using him for money. Something like that. The truth is more complicated. Yeah, I like the nice dinners and the gifts. What 26-year-old wouldn't? But I also thought I was falling in love with him. I thought he was this successful, generous, emotionally available man who was ready for a real relationship. When I found out he was married, when I realized it was all built on lies, it broke something in me. I'm in therapy now trying to figure out why I was so willing to believe him, why I didn't see the red flags. That's not my problem to help you solve. I know. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that I'm not the villain he probably made me out to be. And he's not the victim he's trying to be now. We both made choices. Bad ones. And we both have to live with the consequences. After she hung up, I sat there for a long time holding my phone. The idea of Marcus showing up at Vanessa's building, trying to rekindle something that had imploded months ago, painted a picture of a man I barely recognized. Or maybe I'd never really known him at all. I called Rebecca the next morning, Christmas Day. She answered on the third ring, sounding surprised. Natalie? Is everything okay? I told her about Vanessa's call, about Marcus's attempts to contact her, about him showing up at her building. Rebecca listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. I'm going to be honest with you. This behavior concerns me. The divorce is final, but that doesn't mean he can't make your life difficult. Have you seen him since the court date? No. He doesn't have a key to the house anymore. I changed the locks the day after I filed. Good. Keep it that way. If he tries to contact you, document everything. Screenshots, voicemails, everything. If he shows up at your house or your work, call the police immediately. Don't engage with him. You think he'd actually do something? I think he's a man who's lost control of his life and is trying to get it back however he can. That makes him unpredictable. Just be careful. I spent the rest of Christmas Day at Simone's place with her family, trying to enjoy the normalcy of it all. Her parents were kind and didn't pry. Her brother made bad jokes that actually made me laugh. It was nice being surrounded by people who weren't walking on eggshells around me, who treated me like I was still a whole person and not just the remnants of a failed marriage. The week between Christmas and New Year's was quiet. I took time off work, something Linda had insisted on, and spent the days reorganizing the house. I went through every closet, every drawer, every space that still held traces of Marcus. His old college sweatshirt that I'd been using as a painting shirt, a coffee mug with his company logo, birthday cards he'd given me over the years, full of words that felt hollow now. I packed it all into boxes and drove them to a donation center, and with each box I unloaded I felt a little lighter. New Year's Eve I stayed home. Simone had invited me to a party, but I wasn't ready for that kind of forced celebration. Instead, I made myself a nice dinner, opened a bottle of good wine, and sat on my couch with Miso watching the countdown on TV. When the ball dropped and the crowd cheered and confetti filled the screen, I raised my glass to the empty room. Here's to better choices, I said out loud. Miso meowed in response, which I took as agreement. January brought a cold snap that froze the rain into something sharper. I went back to work refreshed, ready to tackle the new year with actual energy instead of just going through the motions. Linda pulled me into her office the second week back and offered me a lead position on a major campaign for a new client. It meant more money, more responsibility, more travel. I accepted without hesitation. The first trip was to San Francisco for a series of meetings with the client's executive team. I flew down on a Tuesday morning, stayed in a hotel near Union Square, and spent 2 days in conference rooms talking about brand strategy and market positioning. It was exhilarating in a way I hadn't expected. Being good at my job, being valued for my ideas, being somewhere that had nothing to do with Portland or Marcus or the past year of my life. On the last night, I had dinner with the client's marketing director, a woman named Priya who was probably in her early 40s and had the kind of confidence I aspired to. We talked about the campaign, about the industry, about our careers. Over dessert, she asked me about my life outside of work. I'm recently divorced, I found myself saying. It was getting easier to say, like a word I'd had to practice until it felt natural in my mouth. How recently? Finalized in November. But the marriage ended long before that. Priya nodded knowingly. I went through one about 5 years ago. Worst year of my life, but also the year that changed everything for the better. You'll see. Give it time. Everyone keeps saying that. Give it time. Gets better. You'll move on. Because it's true. But I know it doesn't feel true when you're in the middle of it. She leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand. Want to know what helped me the most? What? Therapy. And not just any therapy. I found someone who specialized in helping people rebuild their sense of self after major life changes. It wasn't about processing the divorce, though we did some of that. It was about figuring out who I was without him, what I wanted, what I'd been ignoring about myself for years because I was too busy being a wife. The conversation stayed with me on the flight home. I thought about therapy before but always talked myself out of it. I was handling things fine, wasn't I? I had friends, family, a good job. But maybe fine wasn't the same as good. Maybe there was a difference between surviving and actually living. I found a therapist the following week. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation, which she joked about during our first session. Her office was in a renovated house in the Hawthorne district, with big windows and plants everywhere and a couch that was actually comfortable. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a loose bun and the kind of face that made you feel like you could say anything without judgment. "So tell me why you're here," she said after we'd settled in. I gave her the summary. The marriage, the affair, the money, the divorce. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked at me thoughtfully. That's quite a lot to process. How are you sleeping? Fine, mostly. Better than I was a few months ago. Appetite? Normal. I stress cook now, apparently. My freezer is full of casseroles. She smiled. And what do you want to get out of therapy? What are you hoping to work on? I thought about Priya's words. I want to figure out who I am now. Without him. I spent 6 years being part of a we, and now I'm just me, and I don't know what that means anymore. That's a great place to start. Over the next few months, therapy became an anchor. I went every week, sometimes twice a week when things felt particularly heavy. We talked about my marriage, yes, but also about my childhood, my patterns, the ways I'd learned to ignore my own needs in favor of keeping peace. Dr. Chen was gentle but direct, calling me out when I downplayed things or tried to take responsibility for Marcus's choices. You didn't make him have an affair, she said during one session in February. You didn't make him spend that money. Those were his decisions. You can examine what you might want to do differently in future relationships, but you can't take ownership of his betrayal. Sounds simple, but it was revolutionary. I'd been carrying so much guilt, so much wondering about what I could have done differently, how I could have prevented it. The permission to put that down, to hand that weight back to Marcus where it belonged, changed something fundamental in how I saw myself. Work continued to be a source of pride and distraction. The San Francisco campaign was going well, and by March the client had signed on for additional projects. Linda called me into her office again, this time with an offer I hadn't seen coming. We're opening a satellite office in Seattle, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Just a small team to start, maybe 5 people. We need someone to lead it. Someone who knows our process, our clients, someone we trust. I think you'd be perfect for it. Seattle. My mind immediately went to Marcus's supposed work conferences, to the hotel charges I'd seen in the credit card statements. But then I pushed that aside. Seattle was a city, a big one, and it didn't belong to Marcus's lies. It would mean relocating. We'd help with moving costs, obviously. Better salary, better title. You'd be director of the Seattle office, reporting directly to me. It's a big step up. I looked at the folder without opening it. Seattle. A new city, a new office, a completely fresh start in a place that held no memories of my marriage. The old me, the one who'd been married to Marcus, would have hesitated. Would have worried about leaving my parents, my friends, the house I'd fought to keep. The new me opened the folder and started reading. When would I need to start? Linda's smile told me she'd known what my answer would be. June 1st. That gives you 2 months to wrap up your projects here and get settled up there. I took the job. The decision felt terrifyingly right, like jumping off a cliff and trusting that you'd figure out how to fly on the way down. Simone was thrilled and immediately started planning visits. My parents were supportive, if a bit sad about me moving farther away. Dr. Chen helped me process what the move meant, how it was both a geographical change and an emotional one. You're not running away from anything, she said during a session in April. You're running toward something. That's different. April and May were a blur of activity. I listed the house for sale and it sold in 3 days, a testament to Portland's ridiculous real estate market. I found an apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, a 1-bedroom with exposed brick and huge windows that overlooked the city. I packed up 6 years of my life into boxes, keeping what felt important and donating the rest. Miso handled the chaos with her usual indifference, as long as her food bowl stayed full. The day before the movers came, I did a final walkthrough of the empty house. The pale blue bedroom we painted together was now golden yellow, my choice. The kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday dinner still smelled faintly of coffee. The living room where I'd confronted him about the affair echoed with my footsteps. Each room held ghosts, but they felt less substantial now. Less important. I locked the door behind me for the last time and didn't look back. Seattle welcomed me with characteristic rain and surprising warmth from my new team. The office was small but modern, with a view of the Space Needle and enough coffee shops within walking distance to fuel a small army. My team was young, eager, and talented. Within the first week, I knew I'd made the right choice. The apartment came together slowly. I bought furniture piece by piece, choosing things I liked instead of things we'd compromised on. A velvet sofa in deep green. A dining table made from reclaimed wood. Art for the walls that spoke to me instead of whatever matched the decor. Miso approved of everything, particularly the sunny window seat where she spent most of her days judging the people below. I'd been in Seattle for about 3 weeks when my phone rang with a Portland number I didn't recognize. I answered it cautiously, half expecting it to be Marcus somehow. Natalie Chen? Yes. This is Detective Rodriguez with Portland Police. I'm calling about Marcus Chen. You were married to him, correct? My heart dropped. Yes. We're divorced now. Is he okay? He's fine. But we need to ask you some questions about his whereabouts over the past few months. Would you be available to come down to the station? Or can we do this over the phone? What's this about? We're investigating a series of financial crimes. Identity theft, credit card fraud. Your ex-husband's name has come up multiple times. We're trying to piece together a timeline. I sat down heavily on my new green couch. I can answer questions now. The detective asked me about dates, about our joint accounts, about when I discovered the affair and the missing money. I told him everything, my voice steady even as my hands shook. When I mentioned the credit card debt and the divorce settlement, he asked if I had documentation. I told him I did, that my lawyer had copies of everything. We'll need to see those records. This is part of a larger investigation. It appears Mr. Chen has been engaging in credit card fraud for at least a year, possibly longer. The charges related to his relationship with Ms. Vanessa Reyes are just the beginning. What do you mean? We've identified at least 4 other women he was involved with, all of whom reported similar patterns. He would tell them he was single or divorced, wine and dine them using credit cards that were either stolen, opened fraudulently in other people's names, or maxed out joint accounts with his wife. When the money ran out, he'd move on to the next person. I felt like I'd been punched. For other women, Vanessa wasn't the only one. She was just one of many. The Vanessa situation, that's what led us to him. She filed a police report after he showed up at her apartment building. When we started digging, we found a pattern. We're building a case, but we need testimony from anyone who was affected by his actions. That includes you. What would I need to do? First, send those divorce records to me. Everything that documents his fraudulent use of your joint accounts. Then we may need you to give a formal statement, possibly testify if this goes to trial. Okay. Yes. I'll do it. After the call ended, I sat there for a long time trying to process what I'd learned. For other women. At least. Who knows how many there actually were. The affair with Vanessa hadn't been a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. It was a pattern, a system, something Marcus had been doing possibly for our entire marriage. Everything I thought I knew about him, about us, about the life we'd built together, it was all a lie. Not just the last year. All of it. I called Dr. Chen even though it wasn't our scheduled day. She picked up and, hearing the strain in my voice, told me to come in. An hour later, I was sitting in her familiar office, trying to articulate the strange mix of emotions coursing through me. I thought I was special. Not in a good way, but special in that I was the one he'd betrayed. Does that make sense? Like my pain was unique, my situation was unique. But I wasn't special. I was just another Mark. You were his wife, Dr. Chen said firmly. That's not the same as the others. What he did to you was a deeper betrayal because of the commitment you'd made, the life you'd built. Your pain is valid regardless of how many other people he hurt. But it changes things, doesn't it? Knowing it wasn't about me at all. It wasn't about our marriage or something I did or didn't do. It was just who he is. Who he's always been. Does that make it better or worse? I thought about it. Both. Better because it means I really couldn't have prevented it. Worse because it means I never really knew him at all. That night, I sent Detective Rodriguez everything he'd asked for. All the financial records, all the evidence Rebecca had compiled for the divorce, everything. If Marcus was going to face consequences for what he'd done, real consequences beyond just debt and a failed marriage, I was going to make sure he did. June turned into July, and Seattle started to feel like home. I made friends with my neighbor, a woman named Carrie who worked as a software engineer, and had a dog named Biscuit who got along surprisingly well with Miso. We'd have wine on her balcony some evenings, talking about work and life and nothing in particular. It was easy friendship, the kind that develops naturally when two people are in similar life phases and just click. Work was thriving. The Seattle office exceeded its first quarter projections, and Linda called to congratulate me personally. "You're doing exactly what I knew you would," she said. "Building something great." I started dating cautiously. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with men I met through apps or at work events. It felt strange at first, learning how to be a single person navigating the modern dating world. But it also felt empowering. I could walk away from a bad date without feeling guilty. I could say no without explaining myself. I could choose what I wanted instead of compromising. In August, Detective Rodriguez called again. "We're pressing charges. Multiple counts of credit card fraud, identity theft, and forgery. We'll need you to testify at the preliminary hearing." "When?" "October 15th. Can you make it down to Portland?" "I'll be there." The preliminary hearing was in a courthouse I'd never been to, different from where we'd had the divorce proceedings. I wore the same navy dress, my armor. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting with a public defender because apparently he couldn't afford a private attorney anymore. He looked different. Thinner, grayer somehow, like the past year had aged him a decade. He saw me and his eyes widened. I looked away. The hearing itself was procedural, technical. I sat in the witness box and answered questions about our joint accounts, about the charges I'd discovered, about the timeline of events. Marcus's attorney tried to argue that as his wife at the time, I'd had knowledge of and consent to his use of the cards. My attorney, Rebecca, who'd agreed to represent me for this, calmly presented all the evidence showing I'd had no knowledge of his affairs or his fraudulent charges. The judge bound Marcus over for trial. As they let him out of the courtroom, he tried to catch my eye again. I stared straight ahead. Outside, Rebecca gave me a quick hug. "You did great. This is going to trial probably next spring. Are you prepared for that?" "I have to be." "You don't actually. You could choose not to testify. But I think you know that your testimony will be crucial to putting him away." "I'll testify. However many times you need me to." She smiled. "Good. Now go back to Seattle and live your life. Don't let him take up any more space in your head than necessary." I flew back that evening, exhausted but somehow settled. Seeing Marcus, facing him across a courtroom, it had been hard but also clarifying. He wasn't the man I'd married anymore. Maybe he never had been. But I wasn't the woman who'd married him either. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd chosen to rebuild rather than crumble. Fall in Seattle was beautiful. All golden leaves and crisp air. I started taking pottery classes, despite Simone's jokes, and discovered I actually loved it. There was something meditative about working with clay, about shaping something with your hands and watching it become something else entirely. My apartment started filling up with lopsided bowls and misshapen vases, each one a small victory. Carrie introduced me to her friend group, and I found myself with a whole new social circle. People who didn't know me as Marcus's ex-wife, who just knew me as Natalie, the woman who ran the Seattle office and made decent pottery and always showed up with good wine. It was freeing. In November, almost exactly a year after my divorce was finalized, I went on a date with a man named David. He was an architect, quiet and thoughtful, with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. We met for coffee and ended up talking for 3 hours. He asked me out again and I said yes. It wasn't serious, not yet. But it was nice. He was nice. And for the first time since everything with Marcus had exploded, I felt like maybe I could trust someone again. Maybe I could let someone in without it meaning I was naive or stupid or asking to be hurt. Dr. Chen and I talked about it in therapy. "You're not the same person who married Marcus," she reminded me. "You know what to look for now. You know your worth. You know how to protect yourself while still being open to connection. What if I'm wrong again? What if I choose badly again? Then you'll survive it again. But Natalie, you can't let fear of making another mistake keep you from living. That's letting Marcus win even now." She was right. I knew she was right. So I kept seeing David, kept learning about him, kept letting myself feel cautiously optimistic about where it might go. He was patient with my boundaries, understanding when I needed space, present when I wanted company. It was different from anything I'd had with Marcus, healthier and more balanced. Christmas that year, I flew home to Eugene to spend time with my parents. My dad picked me up from the airport and immediately pulled me into a bear hug. "Look at you," he said, holding me at arm's length. "You look happy." "I am," I realized. "I really am." Christmas Eve, my mom and I were in the kitchen making cookies when she asked me about Seattle, about my life, about whether I was seeing anyone. I told her about David, about how it was new but good. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For leaving. For starting over. For not letting what Marcus did define the rest of your life. You never told me you were engaged before Dad." She looked surprised. "Your father told you about that? Last Thanksgiving. Why didn't you ever mention it?" She shrugged, rolling out dough with practiced efficiency. "Because it didn't matter anymore. It was a lifetime ago and it led me to your father, to you, to this life. The heartbreak was real, but it wasn't the end of my story. Just a chapter one had to get through to reach the good parts." "Do you ever think about him? The guy you were engaged to?" "Not really. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him, if he ever changed, if he ever realized what he threw away. But mostly I'm just grateful I didn't marry him. I got your father instead, and that was infinitely better." I thought about Marcus, about whether I'd ever reach a point where I thought about him that rarely, that neutrally. It seemed impossible now, but maybe with enough time, enough distance, enough new chapters, I'd get there too. The trial was scheduled for March. As the date approached, Detective Rodriguez kept me updated on the case. They'd found evidence of fraud going back almost 5 years. Credit cards opened in other people's names, accounts drained, women deceived. The prosecutors were confident but warned me that Marcus's defense team would try to paint everyone as willing participants who were now having regrets. "Be prepared for them to come after your credibility," the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Huang, told me over the phone. "They'll try to make it seem like you knew what was happening, that you benefited from it, that you're only testifying now out of revenge. I didn't know. I didn't benefit. And this isn't about revenge. I believe you. The evidence supports you. But they're going to try anyway. Can you handle that?" "Yes." The trial lasted 2 weeks. I testified on the 4th day, spending almost 6 hours on the stand answering questions and being cross-examined. Marcus's attorney was aggressive, implying I'd been complicit, suggesting I'd known about the affairs and looked the other way, insinuating that my divorce had been financially motivated. I stayed calm, stuck to the facts, let the evidence speak for itself. When I finally stepped down from the witness stand, I felt wrung out but vindicated. I told the truth. The jury had heard it. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. The verdict came back on a Friday afternoon. Guilty on 17 counts of fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and ordered him to pay restitution to all his victims, including me. 4 years. It seemed both too much and not enough at the same time. I didn't stay for the sentencing. I flew back to Seattle that evening and went straight to Carrie's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. "It's over," I told her. "He's going to prison." "Good. That man deserves worse, but I'll take it." She poured us both a generous glass of wine. "How do you feel?" "Tired. Relieved. Free, maybe? I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." Tomorrow came, and the next day, and the next. Life continued. Work continued. David and I kept seeing each other, and by spring we were officially together, whatever that meant in your 30s when you're both a little damaged and a lot cautious. He met my parents over Easter weekend, and my dad gave him the kind of scrutinizing looks that made David sweat. By the end of the weekend, though, my dad pulled me aside. "I like this one. He's solid." "That's your official assessment?" "Solid. Solid is good. Solid is reliable. Solid won't max out your credit cards for some 26-year-old. I laughed and it felt good. "Yeah, solid is pretty good." May brought the 1-year anniversary of my move to Seattle. Carrie threw me a small party, inviting our friend group and some people from my office. David came too, bringing flowers and a card that made me tear up a little. We all crowded onto Carrie's balcony, drinking champagne and watching the sun set over the city, and I realized something important. This was my life now. Not the life I'd planned when I married Marcus. Not the future I'd imagined when we bought that house in Selwood. But it was mine, built from scratch, earned through heartbreak and hard work, and the decision to keep going even when it felt impossible. Simone visited in June, staying for a long weekend and immediately declaring Seattle superior to Portland in every way, which I knew was just her being a good friend. We spent Saturday at Pike Place Market, eating our way through the stalls and buying too many flowers. Over lunch at a waterfront restaurant, she studied me across the table. "You really are okay now," she said. It wasn't a question. "I really am. I'm glad. There were days last year when I wasn't sure you would be." "Me either. But here we are. Here we are." She raised her glass. "To surviving the worst and building something better." We clinked glasses and I thought about everything that had led me here. The grocery store parking lot where my card declined. The credit card statements that told a story I didn't want to read. The divorce court and the criminal trial and all the days in between when I had to choose between falling apart and staying whole. I'd chosen to stay whole. And it had made all the difference. Summer in Seattle was glorious, all long days and warm evenings. David and I took weekend trips to the islands, hiking and exploring, and learning how to be together without the weight of my past crushing everything. He knew about Marcus, about the trial, about all of it. I told him early on, needing him to understand why I was sometimes cautious, sometimes distant, sometimes needed more time than most people might. "I'm not him," David had said simply. "And I'll prove that every day if that's what it takes." He had been proving it. In small ways and big ones. In showing up when he said he would. In being patient with my boundaries. In never making me feel like I was too much or asking too much or expecting too much. In being, as my dad had said, solid. By the time fall rolled around again, 2 years after that November day when my divorce was finalized, I barely thought about Marcus anymore. Sometimes I'd see something that reminded me of him, of us, of that life. A restaurant we used to go to. A song that had been our song. But the memories had lost their sharp edges. They were just stories now, things that had happened to someone I used to be. Detective Rodriguez sent me an email in October letting me know that Marcus had started serving his sentence, and that the restitution payments would begin coming through once he was released and could work again. I thanked him for the update and archived the email. I didn't need the money, not really. I was doing fine on my own. Better than fine. What I needed was the closure of knowing he'd face consequences, and I had that now. In November, David and I were having dinner at my apartment when he asked me something that caught me off guard. "Have you ever thought about what you want long term? Not just with us but with your life?" I set down my fork. That's a big question for a Tuesday night. I know. But I want to know. What does Natalie Chen want for her future? I thought about it, really thought about it. I want to keep building the Seattle office. I want to maybe adopt another cat so Miso has a friend. I want to take that pottery class in Japan I've been looking at. I want to keep seeing you if you'll have me. I want a life that's mine, that I chose, that makes me happy. That's a good list. What about you? What do you want? Pretty much all of that. Minus the cat. Biscuit is enough animal for me. We laughed and the conversation moved on, but something had shifted. We were talking about futures now, plural, ours together. It felt both thrilling and terrifying, but mostly it just felt right. The holidays came and went. Another Christmas in Eugene with my parents, where David joined us this time and won my mother over by complimenting her cooking and helping my dad fix a broken cabinet. New Year's Eve spent at Carrie's with our friend group, counting down to midnight with champagne and hope and the settled knowledge that this year would be better than the last, and the last had been pretty damn good. On January 15th, 3 years to the day after my card had declined in that grocery store parking lot, I got an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was from Vanessa. "I know we haven't talked in years, and you have no reason to want to hear from me. But I wanted you to know that I'm in therapy, I'm doing better, and I'm truly sorry for my part in everything that happened. You deserved better. I hope you're well." I stared at the message for a long time, considering whether to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to leave that chapter closed. But another part, the part that had learned something about forgiveness and moving forward, wanted to acknowledge her growth. I typed back, "Thank you for saying that. I hope you're finding your way too." It wasn't friendship. It wasn't absolution. But it was something. An ending, maybe, to that particular story. That night, David stayed over. Something that had become increasingly common. We were talking about maybe looking for a place together, taking that next step. Nothing was decided yet, but the conversations were happening, and that felt significant. You know what I realized today? I said as we were getting ready for bed. What's that? It's been 3 years since everything fell apart with Marcus. 3 years since I found out about the affair and the money and all of it. How do you feel about that? I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes since then. Like that woman who had her card declined in the grocery store is someone I used to know but barely recognize now. Is that good or bad? It's good. It means I grew. It means I survived and came out the other side as someone I actually like being. He pulled me close. I like who you are too. Even with all the baggage. Everyone has baggage. Yours just happens to involve credit card fraud and a criminal trial. At least it's never boring. I laughed and let myself sink into the comfort of being known, being accepted, being loved for exactly who I was, past and all. 3 years since the worst day of my life up to that point. 3 years of therapy and growth and hard choices and new beginnings. 3 years of learning that you can survive anything if you decide to, that heartbreak doesn't have to be an ending, that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you clears the way for the best things to come after. Marcus was in prison. I was in Seattle building a life I loved with people who valued me. The credit cards had been paid off. The house had been sold. The marriage was over. And I was finally truly completely free. That grocery store parking lot, that declined card, that moment of humiliation and confusion and dawning horror. It had been the beginning of everything. The beginning of the end, yes, but also the beginning of this. Of who I'd become. Of the life I'd built from scratch. And when I thought about it that way, I could almost feel grateful. Not for what Marcus did, but for what I'd done with the wreckage he left behind. I'd taken broken pieces and built something whole. I'd taken betrayal and turned it into strength. I'd taken the worst and made it the catalyst for the best. That's not nothing. That's everything. 5 years after that day in the grocery store, I stood in my own pottery studio in Capitol Hill, teaching a weekend workshop to a group of eager students. The space was small but mine, a dream I'd funded with promotions and careful saving. David was at the coffee shop next door, working on architectural plans, waiting to walk home with me when class ended. Life had become beautifully ordinary. The Seattle office had expanded to 12 people. Miso had gotten a companion, an orange tabby named Wasabi who followed her everywhere. David and I had moved into a house in Fremont with a garden and enough space for both our lives to fit comfortably together. We talked about marriage sometimes casually without pressure. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after. We had time. I rarely thought about Marcus anymore. He'd been released from prison 6 months ago, and the restitution payments came through automatically each month. I donated them to a women's shelter that helped survivors of financial abuse. It felt right, turning his theft into something that helped others. Vanessa had reached out once more 2 years after that LinkedIn message. She was engaged, working as a consultant, still in therapy. We'd met for coffee, a strange and surprisingly healing conversation where we both acknowledged the roles we played in our own recovery. We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. Just 2 women who'd been caught in one man's web of lies and had found our own ways out. My parents visited often, always marveling at how different I seemed from that devastated woman who'd spent Thanksgiving with them all those years ago. My dad still called David solid, which had become an inside joke between the 3 of us. My mom had taken up pottery too, inspired by my passion, and we'd spend hours on video calls comparing our latest pieces. As I watched my students shape clay on their wheels, I thought about transformation. How you can take something formless and give it structure. How you can take something broken and remake it into something new. How the heat that's meant to destroy can actually make you stronger if you survive it. That grocery store parking lot had felt like the end of everything, but it had really been the beginning. The beginning of knowing my worth. The beginning of building a life on my own terms. The beginning of understanding that betrayal doesn't have to define you unless you let it. David walked in as I was cleaning up, smiling that quiet smile that still made my heart skip. We locked up together, walking home through Seattle streets that finally felt like mine. Our conversation was easy, comfortable, full of plans for dinner and weekend trips, and all the small moments that make up a life. Somewhere, Marcus was living with the consequences of his choices. But here, in this city, in this life, with these people who loved me for exactly who I was living with mine. And mine were beautiful. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.